This is very serious. Trump has a serious Epstein problem.
More Epstein files were released today. This morning, the court unsealed even more documents stemming from the civil case against Jeffrey Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. Today's batch comprised of 17 items totaling 327 pages and includes a bombshell from one of Epstein's alleged victims. Sarah Ransom wrote that she possessed sex tapes of 6 high-profile figures, including former presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, as well as Britain's Prince Andrews and Virgin Group founder Richard Branson. Ransom retracted her statement 3 years later.
You noticed in the Fox and Friends interview, Donald Trump did this right here, bro.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others.
What an odd thing to say.
I didn't know you were going to be talking about this.
Would you
Right? That is a very odd thing to say. Indeed, what an odd thing to say. First off, he backs away from it. And second off, he kind of is like, well, yeah, not really the Epstein thing. I'll declassify this other stuff, but the Epstein thing, we got to make sure that all the I did doesn't get out there, is what Trumpy is saying. Got to make sure to protect him and his cronies. Trump is involved, and people aren't going after him. Instead of going after Trump for all his phone messages and his connections to Epstein and him, being involved sexually with young girls, what we're doing is we're talking about Joe Biden's debate performance. You have to be shitting me, bro. That's what we're doing. Thank you, New York Times. Thank you, CNN. Thank you, you pieces of shit. And he's on those flight logs. Now, everybody is all consumed about the island, the Epstein Island, but the deal is this. Most of the abuse happened not at that island.
From Sarah Ransom, who is a well-known victim. She's come forth before with her story, but here she's alleging that there are sex tapes. And in the first part of this email,
there's tapes.
Alleging that this sex tape, she is alleging very specifically that this sex tape includes Bill Clinton and Richard Branson and also Prince Andrew, and that she has this sex tape that they were filmed. Now, in the second email, she really just doubles down on this. And not only does she say that these sex tapes exist, but she also says she's willing to swear under oath and testify in court over these. But as you said, Allison, it is very important to note that she later retracted these statements and in fact claimed herself that she made these up. So I'm not quite sure how much veracity we can attach to this email, Allison.
Yeah, see, that's what's really hard. Obviously, look at what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. The man is dead. There are people who know the truth, but they don't want to end up like Jeffrey Epstein did. But this case is so dirty, though, guys. We know that Prince Andrew and Trump and Bill Clinton were all over these flight logs. There have been accusations about Trump, and of course, he denies it. There's other people, Bill Gates. Now, what happened was these victims came forward, and Epstein got arrested, and he went to trial, and they had this case in Palm Beach, and the attorney there was Alex Acosta. That guy made a deal with Epstein to sort of let him off, and the victims didn't know it. Alex Acosta created a settlement for this guy without the victims knowing. The victims found out about it, and they were incensed, and so he essentially got off scot-free in a way. Then Donald Trump made that guy his labor secretary. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, took the prosecutor who let Epstein off, and he gave him a promotion. He put him in his cabinet, labor secretary. Then Jeff Epstein dies by suicide, and the whole thing sort of whisks away. And then she ends up tight-lipped, taking the brunt of the thing and going to prison because she'll never tell. I've always thought that was the weirdest part about this whole case, right? Is that here it is. There's a man selling teenage girls for sex to other powerful men, and ultimately the only person that goes to jail for this is a woman, right? If you want to see like an advertisement for what patriarchy looks like, that's it right there. And there we go. That's the setup, bro. And now Trump is on these phone logs. Trump was on that plane. I mean, this is all dirty, bro. And Trump is all over this. Trump was very close to this guy. Very close. So now, about these documents, though, these messages, this is accurate. These are phone messages from Jeffrey Epstein's house. Donald Trump, with a personal number, repeatedly calling in between these messages of women finding out about their work and or clients calling in to get women. So these phone messages are real. This is Katie Johnson lawsuit against Trump and Epstein. The first one was filed in federal court in Riverside, California in April by someone acting without an attorney and using the name Katie Johnson. That suit named Trump and Epstein as defendants, alleging the two men held Johnson as a slave, repeatedly forced her to engage in sexual acts against her will. Subsequent news reports raised doubts about who filed the suit. Johnson claimed she had just $300 in assets. She was living in a home in 29 Palms. That's out in the desert, out by Palm Springs, but like a poor sort of unincorporated area of the desert. I believe there's a military base out there and whatnot, or a military like depot of some sort. But Radar Online reported neighbors said the home had been foreclosed upon and vacant since its owner died last year. So there's some shady information about exactly who this Katie Johnson is. This is part of the document releasing. But there was this page of accusations. All right, page 3 of this lawsuit that says, on the third occasion involving defendant Donald J. Trump, the plaintiff, Katie Johnson, was forced to engage in an unnatural lesbian sex act with her fellow minor and sex slave Maria Doe, age 12, for the sexual enjoyment of defendant Trump. After this sex act, both minors were forced to orally copulate defendant Trump by placing their mouths simultaneously on his erect penis until he achieved sexual orgasm. It's pretty graphic, actually. And I don't want to picture that, but thank you, lawsuit. All right. After zipping up his pants, Donald Trump physically pushed both minors away while angrily berating them for the poor quality of their sexual performance. Now, it's funny because as toxic as that is, you can actually picture that happening, can't you? That they would do the thing and then he would feel bad about it and berate them instead of dealing with his own shame. It seems to play, doesn't it? So there's some pretty gnarly in here. That is pretty graphic, gnarly stuff. Now, we don't really know about the veracity of all this stuff because, like it says here, a lawsuit was filed against Trump in the lead up to the 2016 election. The anonymous plaintiff, identified only as Katie Johnson in the initial legal filing that was dismissed, and Jane Doe in subsequent legal filings, said she was raped at Epstein's New York City apartment. But these lawsuits have all been put out and then dropped. So basically what happened is an anonymous woman named Katie Johnson filed this suit in 29 Palms, making those claims. Then she dropped it. Then there were 2 other lawsuits making the same claims by a Jane Doe that were filed and then dropped. So there have been multiple filings of this, but we don't actually have anyone on the record that has come forward and carried this through. But there's all kinds of corroborating evidence of Trump being involved in this orbit. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy how connected he was. Hanging out with his kids with the man. It wasn't just bumping into him at parties. They were buddies. Donald Trump's calling him, leaving him messages. He's on the plane. He's taking his kids to events with him. They were very close. And I mean, you know why they were close. Because Epstein provided Trump, I'm sure, with many, many young ladies to feast his, disgusting appetite on. And it really bothers me too that since these documents came to light, you know what we've been talking about on social media? We've been talking about Joe Biden's debate. Why isn't the New York Times pouring through these documents and going to town on the Trump-Epstein connection? Why are they talking about Joe Biden being a little scruffy at the beginning of the debate? Huh? You got to ask yourself that. New York Times, you pieces of... Let's go, fucker! What are they doing, bro? Seriously. See, this is the problem with capitalism right here, guys, is in capitalism, if you have enough wealth, you get to do whatever. You get away with whatever. There's just no limit to what you can get away with. The only limit is your funds. And yeah, you're not wrong. If you're pro-Trump, you are in a load of stuff. If you are pro-Trump, you're pro-sexual abuse. If you are pro-Trump, you're pro-Epstein. If you're pro-Trump, you're pro-tax fraud and cheating in your business dealings and bankrupting and scamming people with your university. Dude, yeah, lock him up! Let's go. Dude, and ironically, evangelical Christians are all tied up to this. Like, my God.
And as we've established from the record now, maintained very cordial relationships with Palm Beach County and Florida and federal law enforcement officials well in jail, to the point that he gets a deal no one has ever received before, at a level of leniency we have never seen before.
Never seen.
I'm not one to believe in conspiracy theories, but this is one that certainly turned out to be true. Yeah. And the question now is why? Now that we have the documentary record, there is no denying that this prosecutor went wildly out of the norm and out of their way to minimize what Jeffrey Epstein did in an attempt to place blame on the victims. Why? This is a conversation that now needs to happen afresh, and that prosecutor needs to explain why they threw out over 100 years of grand jury precedent for this specific, very wealthy, very connected...
See, that is a problem because, like he said, they're in the history of criminal cases, they've never seen anyone with the grand jury with witnesses prosecuting a crime that went out of their way to not prosecute and to minimize such an incredibly serious crime. And that's very telling. And one of those guys is trying to be president right now.